Christian Stadil, take one. First of all, you can say it's a philosophy on an overall level about seeing the company not as an island for itself, but seeing the company as a part of its surroundings, as a part of its ecosystem, as interlinked with its customers, its colleagues, employees, even its competitors, and as a part of also the global ecosystem. And that sounds fluffy, I know, so to elaborate, that means that when I co-wrote the book Company Karma more than 20 years ago, and when we started working under this umbrella, the three pillars, primary pillars we have under Company Karma was not something that people worked that much with at that time. So today, as I said in the room, it's a little bit more old hat, which makes me so happy because it has been more commonplace to work within this sphere. And what is that about? What do I mean? I mean that our first pillar is CSR, ESG. When we start to look at our value chain and how we produce and so on, 20 odd years ago, it was not really something that people did that much. The thing about looking at the company as a part of, acknowledging that the world is interchanging but also interlinked, is also kind of a new way at looking at a company, because it was not so long after that the internet really prevailed. You had the fiber optical cable enabling communication to be spread very fast. It became cheaper to travel. So the world became smaller. And that's why we wrote the book Company Karma. That's why also, I started and co-founded this philosophy. So the second pillar is about making projects that are rooted in the core competence of each individual company, in our case, for internal and external relevance. So to make projects that our employees can be engaged with, but also that resonates externally. So to use Hummel, the Hummel Group as an example and as a benchmark. In Hummel we do sports. So we have made more than 50 projects where we try to use sports as a change maker, working together with an NGO in the jungles of Sierra Leone, creating positive change in terms of having child soldiers meet the villages where they used to, kill and so on. It's about working with the national team of Afghanistan, working with women empowerment in a country that really needed, and again, unfortunately, still need the women to be seen and to be allowed to live out their passion for everything we consider normal and joie de vivre, sports in this case, but also music and the reading of books, studying and so on. It was when we made the black Danish national team jersey for the World Cup in Qatar, based on the notion that there was not everything was perfect in Qatar. Seldom anything is, but for us, we wanted to make a little statement related to all the dead guest workers, whether it was 6, as somebody said, or 50,000, as somebody else said. But at least we made a all black football kit for the first time, I think, still ever. So to kind of send a signal that Qatar, yes, it was about football, it was about the joy of football, because that was also important, but it was maybe not a wedding we went to, it was maybe a little bit more also a funeral. So Company Karma and Hummel, as maybe the last example for now, is also about working with Alexander and his LGBT organization in Russia during the World Cup, making guerrilla marketing in a country where gay and lesbians, as an example, still risk getting, beaten down just because of whom they love. So this is how we try to work in each company, and we have worked like this for many years. The third pillar is about more internally working with creating meaning. I really believe that, and it is also to a further degree shown in many studies. One big one was based on, I think, some of your, Forbes 500 companies published by Harvard Business Review, that very clearly showed that companies that work with meaning, they also earn more money. I think it's because, meaning creates motivation, motivation creates production, and production creates income. We have a lot of different companies in our group, in the Tornico Group. So for us, it's even more prevalent to work with, with creating meaning also across companies. The old analogy is the guy that comes to a village and there's somebody who's working on a stone. He asks him, "What are you working on?" He says, "I'm just, rubbing a stone." He goes to the next guy who's also working on a stone. He asks him, "What are you doing?" "I'm rubbing on this stone because I'm a part of building this wall." And then the third guy, he's also just rubbing this stone, and he asks him, and he says, "I'm a part of building a cathedral." And that's actually still quite a good picture when it comes to what we want to achieve. Are we there yet? No, not at all. But this is kind of something that I use quite a lot of time on, that our colleagues in the Tornico Group should feel that if they work in Lactosan with cheese powder, or in Hummel with sports, or in Stanico with real estate, or wherever in Hartmann with packaging, or Sonovo Technology Group with food-related technology, they should feel that they're part of the Tornico Group also. Not primarily because they should have focus on what they do in their day-to-day, but I would like them to feel a part of a bigger family also. That there should be some kind of meaning in what they do. So it's also about colleague retention, it's about employer branding, but it's also about making Tornico a kick-ass place to work. So and this is rolled out in many different ways, from events to awards to prizes that we give out that hopefully our colleagues also feel they are part of. It's about rolling out in 2 weeks' time, online live meditation for all, at least for 3,500 colleagues that we're going to reach with that initiative, and so on and so forth. So Company Karma it's about these 3 pillars, and it's a little bit a new way of looking at a company. Not so new anymore, but at least it was when we started thinking a little bit differently. Yeah, there's not so many companies that, have a father and a son, or a father and a daughter working together for so many years, and also from the beginning. So I've been also very, very lucky. I've been lucky in many ways. First and foremost, since I have a very loving dad. He can also be a pain in the ass, like probably all dads. I don't know about yours. But he's a fantastic, and especially one thing as a dad, but even to a further degree, he's a fantastic granddad towards my children. And but besides that, when we started up, he was probably the best corporate lawyer in Denmark. So to be able to start up as a young man, 26, 27, together with somebody who has a vast area of knowledge within different industries, because that's what you get as a lawyer, because one day it's about machinery, one day it's about real estate, one day it's about something totally different. So it's been very inspiring for me, and still to this day he can beat me any day of the week when it comes to M&A. He's probably one of the best in that in the world, I would think. He's fantastic at that because he has this law background. Then hopefully I can beat him at other stuff, maybe some selling and some branding and marketing, and maybe some leadership skills here and there, and so on. But he's very good at that. And hopefully also that I think, because I've been also been buying, investing in, co-founding companies, many of them the last 25 years, also outside Tornico. So I think that I've learned a lot from him. So it's been a privilege. But very more on point in terms of your question, Claus. I think the reason why it has been possible is, first of all, that, as I mentioned, I've been doing a lot of things on the side, from sitting in national, ministry-appointed boards, to co-founding companies, to sitting on boards in a variety of companies, including tech companies already 25 years ago. to writing books, to giving lectures, to doing a lot of stuff on my own through all the years. One thing. Secondly, it's also been about we never shared an office. I think if we shared an office, I think it would not have been possible, both from his perspective and my perspective. And it's, for me, it's also been about turning it into a positive. Because in the US, when you tell that you have co-founded a company, which I've actually been an owner of from scratch, from when we started, which is also a great, I have a big thank you due to my father also, because that even though we were there together and the company bears our names, then again, he was a driving force in the beginning, the first years, and played a pivotal part. And so that's also why his name is first, Thor, and Nicholas is my middle name. But it, for me to acknowledge that is actually a good thing has taken some time, because when I go to the US, people, everybody is also actually in Switzerland and Germany. Wow, you worked with your father and you co-founded a company with your father. How impressive, and so nice to hear, because you have a tradition for generational company. Ours is a little bit of a mix, so it's a little bit different, but still. And you also in Switzerland, in Germany, in the US, see it as a positive, especially also in Japan, because they tell me, who do I trust more than my father or my son or my son's son? So that's also why they take their father's name in the US, which is a little bit maybe too much. I'm happy that I'm not called Thor Stady the third or the second. But in Denmark, it's not like that. We are very much formed by the notion of Jante, it is called, the law of Jante. And that is about, you should not think you are somebody. And there's good things to that, because it has the ability to also make Denmark a very democratic, a very flat country. We pay a lot of tax, which we do with pleasure, at least most of the time, because it also means that we don't get our head cut off in the revolution. It also means that we can easily fire and hire, because when people are fired, they get money from the state. Students in Denmark get money to study, which is quite amazing. So in many ways, we have a great country. And I think this thing that there's shorter distance between rich and poor, I think is very healthy, actually. But it also sometimes means on the negative side that it is a little bit about when somebody has some wealth. Luckily, I more or less never experienced it. Thank you much to those of you out there from Denmark. But I know friends and so on that sometimes it can be a little bit about, they're bad because they're rich, or they are, maybe it also has something to do with, you visited me, I ride a nice electric car from Mercedes, but it took me many years to find it, and I bought it used and so on. So maybe, it's also more, if you have 10 Bentleys or 10 Ferraris, all respects, if you earn your money, you should do whatever you want with them. But maybe it also has a little bit to do how you live for your life. So maybe I'm also influenced by this Danish notion. It can be, probably. But at least it's very much about, you shouldn't think you are somebody. It's better to come from nothing. Did I do that or not? Yeah, I didn't come from nothing, but we didn't have, my father and mother were, my father was studying when I grew up. They were very young parents, so we didn't have any money. The first 10, 12, 15 years of my life, very little, and we never were like affluent, which I'm very happy for today, because that's a little bit different with my kids. So we have to really teach them, also a little bit about the Danish values, so they still go with their mother in discount stores to buy, with the yellow label, and if the meat is running out tomorrow, we buy it, and so on. So not because we have to get a price for that, because that's just normal for us. But so in Denmark, there's a thing about working together with family. It's a little bit, not always, but it can be a little bit. Maybe it's just me, could be a little bit frowned upon. So for me, it at least has taken some years to actually see it as a great thing, as a huge privilege. And also, having through all the years the room to maneuver, co-founding companies, investing in companies, exiting companies, sitting on all kinds of boards within all kinds of industries. I've been in the travel industry. I've been in, again, online in different companies, and advisory boards on Danish Design School and others, all kinds of projects, for Ben & Jerry's in London, for sustainable business, for all these kinds of things around the world for many, many, many years. And I think that has been great to also have this room to maneuver and to find myself. And I think I've landed in myself, especially after getting my 4 kids and my wife Alice. And I think today I've never been happier, even though happiness, in my opinion, is something that comes and goes. But on a medium, at least on an average, I think the average kind of happiness index is more positive than it's ever been before. And work-wise, I think we are in a very good place in the group. Earnings-wise, now we are at the Money Summit. We're looking at the second year in a row coming out with more than or just below our highest earnings year, which was in 21, more than 1 billion Danish kroner. This year it's going to be probably 975 million kroner. EBT before tax, and then 1.34 billion kroner EBITDA. So one of the best years ever, and it's going super well. Alone Hartmann and our group, you also met the CEO, they do probably this year around 800 million kroner EBITDA, nearly 600 million before tax. So that is just 1 out of 5 verticals doing really well. So from a business point of view, we're doing better than ever, even though there's challenges all the time, as I said, with Hummel in Turkey and a lot of other stuff. Never a dull day, up and down in showbiz. But so business-wise, doing well. Where I am working today, I founded this CEO board some years ago, where I work very closely with our CEOs. So instead of having an external board, I work very closely with our CEOs. And this has been really great, I think, because they know each other's companies better than somebody coming from the street. And they have different kinds of skill sets, from finance to sales to marketing to being an engineer and so on, back-end production. So they are great sparring partners for me, and it's a great kind of symposium where we meet every second, third month, and that's where I see myself doing a lot of leading the next 20 odd years, and besides being the CEO of the group and so on. And then besides still having the possibilities to do these projects that I really believe a lot in, working with Bhutan, helping His Majesty the King and the Prime Minister to achieve their goals. Now they're the second 5-year plan that we just started now from 24 to 29, and then hopefully also being on board when we take the last 5 years from 29 to 34, going from a least developed country to a high income country, meaning having a GDP more than $10 billion. I think it's fantastic to be a part of that, managing to be a part of really being part of the creation or the recalibration of a already fantastic country, but to make it even more fantastic in Bhutan. I think that's so privileged. So these kind of projects, to be able to do them bilaterally to what we do in the Tornike Group, and still be a father of 4 great kids, and most of the time, that is a great privilege. So I think I'm really here in Zurich today on a kind of a high note, even though again tomorrow is about cash flow in Turkey, and it could be one of our kids has yelled at, as a pre-teen, yelled at his mother or something, and then we have to talk on that. Hey, don't do that, Winston, and So that's also about yes, that's a part of being human. A variety of things that comes to mind, when it comes to what I look at when I invest in venture and what I've done myself. Today, when I invest in venture, I look mostly at venture companies that relates to our existing, five verticals. We still invest a lot, not only in venture, but we really these days invest a lot. We have an investment budget alone in our food companies of more than 200 million euro, extraordinary this year in 25, which is for us a lot. Some of that is actually also in terms of buying new technologies, related to venture, companies coming up. Can be biosecurity, can be some kind of automation, robotics, and so on. So we invest still a lot in venture, but correlated with what we do in our bigger companies, also in terms of time. I still do invest in venture, but have done it a lot. I was also on the board of the Dragon's Den, Lions Den, which is also called in Denmark. Also here, I think, Hule des Løves or something. The four seasons. And so besides something that relates to what we do in our bigger companies, it's for me, I usually use what I call the toothbrush test, which I still find quite good, about asking this product, this platform, this company, do they have a service or a platform or a product that I can see myself or somebody I know use every day or maybe even multiple times a day, like a toothbrush. Second question, is it a product, service, platform that makes your everyday life easier or the world a better place, like a toothbrush in terms of diseases of the mouth and so on? And if you can, hack off some of those, you are in a pretty good place when it comes to investing. So that's a good question also as an entrepreneur to ask yourself. So that's a good question, I think, to ask as an investor, but also as an entrepreneur. Another thing is a team. For me, when you start up something, but also when you invest in something, when it comes to venture, sometimes the horse is more important than the jockey. I've invested in so many venture companies where I just thought, okay, these guys and girls were just so fantastic. I want to do something with them, co-founding a company, investing in them. But it's probably not going to be that thing we're going to earn money on. The two examples come to mind. One of them is a company that at that time called Tradono. You probably never heard about them. We were primarily in the Nordics, also in other places in Europe, but biggest in the Nordics. It started as a company where we looked at groups on, at that time, Facebook. It says a little bit about when it was. And we look at the groups, what did the groups talk about? What did they trade in within these groups? Fishing rods, cars, clothing, and so on. And then we had kind of a parasite strategy going in, offering to be an administrator of this group, and then we migrated them from that to our platform, Tradono. That was basically the strategy. So we had a platform where people were buying and selling fishing rods, bicycles, all kinds of things. But then some years passed that we started to focus the business more towards clothing, used, pre-loved clothing. Then actually a Swiss fund came in and injected money into the company to grow it. But as you know, many funds, they have kind of a cut-off date. So because they cannot allow themselves to think with the heart, they just say 5 years, if you haven't reached your targets, we are off. And this was the case here, even though they were quite close, Mads, our CEO, and the team. And then that meant that we had the possibility to come in, us initial investors from the beginning, to invest at a lower valuation and to again, because we had been diluted, get a higher stake in the company. Mads and his team did a tremendous job, grew it even further, and then sold to 1.5 years ago to Vinted, the market leader in Europe, together with Von Privé, I think. I was about to say Je crois. I think in Europe, and for me it was I think 12x on my investment. So that's a good example of you believe in this case Mads, a 24-year-old passionate founder, but you probably also thought at that time, is it going to be that we're going to succeed with? Probably not. I have another case called All-Unite. We wanted to give free internet to the world. All unite. But today we are the kind of the market leader within measuring marketing when it comes to outdoor. You drive past a McDonald's sign. If you have your phone, we can probably to a certain degree measure you, and then we know and we can tell McDonald's whether you turn right and buy your Big Mac and so on, and many other things also when it comes to airports and malls and so on. So that's an interesting company where we also have the Danish state, and their venture fund is a part of it also, and I was a part from the beginning. I was the first investor in, before there was a company, before we started, so it's a kind of a co-owner or co-founder together with the two others guys. And today the guys, tell me they don't want to sell if they get an offer of 100 million euro. So that can be very interesting if it grows as we think the next year or two. They think it's going to be a unicorn. I can settle with less because I've been there from the beginning, so I've been buying up. Like when North Zone, they again 5 years sold their shares, I could buy up. Coop Invest sold their shares, I could buy up. So I've kept quite a nice level of shares for a small amount of money. So that's a little bit the same, that you believe in these two guys, Esben and Kasper, and you stay in there even though everybody else moves out. In this case, sometimes it was a little bit, are you really sure? And then hopefully something comes into fruition, but that's something way different than when you started. So again, what is the advice? It is about creating a good team around you. If you're a good sales guy, you should probably, or girl, you should probably have somebody who also knows about numbers, about budgets. If you have a tech platform, you should for sure from the beginning have a good CTO. It's also more fun if you're a team. If you're yourself, it's not so fun. You have somebody who shares the downturns with you, but also the good days when you pop the champagne or maybe the Prosecco if you are a little bit on the lower level in terms of how much capital you have attracted. And you have somebody to ping pong with and so on. So I think it's very important to create a team around you. And it's also shown in all studies that venture companies that have more than one founder, they're way more successful. That has 2 or 3 founders. So those are probably some of the advices I would give.